Western animation has done its best to approach the fandom and zeal that many have for anime. If you take a wide look at the landscape of Western animation over the past 10 years or so, we've seen a number of Western shows that have followed the tropes of the most popular anime, namely shoujo and shonen anime, to capture the enthusiasm of their audiences. It has been well documented in recent years that when it comes to animation consumption, and even more so for comic consumption, Japanese and Eastern productions have taken the lead in the marketplace, with the exception of Hollywood blockbusters. However, it may surprise you to know that within the Western animation ecosystem, concerning shows that have been elevated as groundbreaking, those that many would argue are anime, there is a show lacking any sort of apparent recognition, somewhat older, that better fits the definition of anime than arguably the majority of the programs that fall into the anime-inspired category. That show is Hey Arnold. I'm sure most would wonder, how could Hey Arnold possibly be considered an anime? Well, if you'd allow, I will paint that very picture for you. Hey Arnold was a show about a boy named Arnold who had a mystically football-shaped head that lived in a metropolitan city. He goes about his daily life in school, hanging with his best friend Gerald and other friends, and just interacting with a collection of friendly and not so friendly, unique and unusual city folk. He lives in a boarding house with his grandparents and an assortment of kooky boarders from various walks of life. Most episodes are spent with Arnold facing various problems in his school, home, or community while interacting with and often coming to the aid of the vast array of characters in his surroundings. Learning from them, teaching them, helping them find solutions to problems, or just bending his ear. Now, where's the anime in the show? Let me continue. Hey Arnold also has its own brand of action and magic. There's an episode when Arnold learns karate to face a bully. He had to learn restraint and self-control in that episode. In another, there's a ghost from a haunted train. A little magic. There's also mystery. Most notably in the series, the mystery of Arnold's parents' disappearance. A mystery that came to its conclusion in the 2017 movie Hey Arnold Jungle Movie, which featured a type of quasi-mysticism. Now, you may be saying to yourself, now I see, I get the anime comparison. But let me continue. Hey Arnold was actually animated in an Eastern studio called Hongying Animation Company Limited in Jiangsu, China. Is it coming together now? Hey Arnold was an anime. It was a slice of life. Slice of life is a genre of animation coined generally for anime that explores the mundane and ordinary. It takes the typical, almost boring paths that people take throughout their day or week and paints with new colors the things that most would find undeserving of any consideration. Sitting through class, commuting to work, shopping, waiting for a bus. The slice of life unfolds the quiet beauty and valuable lessons of such moments. Moments that represent the vast majority of life. The moments in between birthdays, holidays, vacations, and graduations. Sometimes slice of life shows are comedies, sometimes they're more drama, sometimes they're more romantic, but they always illustrate the usual in ways that make it seem unfamiliar, in ways that remind us that even in what we know well, there are still things to learn. Hey Arnold had a unique ability to do this. Hey Arnold would take the most unassuming characters in our daily lives and make them foreign, verging on alien. The ice cream man that comes down the street is now the Jolly Ollie man, a manic, child-hating rage monster. Your doting grandmother is a lovable but batty old woman who has transcended senility with a lunacy that causes her to invoke innumerable past lives. You live with a bachelor that works in demolition and would like nothing more to do in his spare time than writing poetry when he isn't destroying things. But it isn't only. How Hey Arnold explores how these typically ordinary characters can be turned on their heads that makes this a slice of life. Hey Arnold shines most when the show slows down to tell the most esoteric stories of the human experience. In one scene, Arnold helps an older boy with a reading disability regain his confidence to leave his stoop.
It can't be that bad. But it is! Everybody's making fun of me!
Maybe if you tried to lead the stoop, people wouldn't make fun of you.
No! I can't!
What if I tried to help you?
It'd just be a waste of time!
What do you got to lose?
In another, through the actions of Arnold and the silent sacrifice of Helga, Mr. Nguyen and his daughter are reunited at Christmas time, after being separated for over a decade in Vietnam during war times.
You had to get rid of the soldier. You were saving her life.
It took me 20 years until I could finally get out of the country. That's why I came to this city. I believe she is here somewhere, but I have not been able to find her. Can't believe it. This is my daughter.
Hello, everyone.
Arnold also consoles a recluse, who devoted his life to some of the most unlikely animals after failing to give him the help and community that he wanted for him.
They're birds. I trust them. I understand them. It's people I don't understand.
Pigeon Man. Wait. None of this would have happened if I hadn't...
Arnold, don't be sad. You've taught me that some people can be trusted. And I'll never forget that. Wherever there's a bird in need of seed, I'll be there. I just hope there's another Arnold where I go next.
For all Hey Arnold did and said about having fun and being a kid and just joking around, it was much more often a show about the mystery of life, how unusual and dissatisfying it can be, how unnatural you feel when you encounter something you're not ready for, like you're frozen at the center of the universe, or how small and loud you feel when you want something you can't have, like you've been transformed into a cicada. Hey Arnold does all of this with a whimsical and moody jazz musical scoring that organically spurs the viewer on to think more critically, juxtaposing Hey Arnold with the frenetic hum and rhythm usually associated with urban centers. Hey Arnold does this with suggestive watercolor-like textures in its animation that give each ordinary day, walking to school, eating an ice cream cone, talking to a friend, a surreal, imaginative feel. Hey Arnold does this much in the same way as the most popular anime in the slice of life genre. It is whimsical. It takes a microscope up to our more mundane moments and examines the foreign universality of them. It is fun and comedic, but it is also somber and quiet. It's character-driven, and it doesn't rely on impossible circumstances or unlikely events to capture our attention. Hey Arnold embodied much of what we find in traditional slice-of-life anime. But it isn't really an anime. For all their similarities, even for being animated by a Chinese studio, Hey Arnold isn't an anime. It's a cartoon. Neither is Hey Arnold anime inspired. And this is important to recognize because Hey Arnold represents both something that has been lost in traditional Western animation and a fallacy of the anime-inspired category. Firstly, what makes anime anime isn't action or magic. The way Western anime-inspired animation is marketed nowadays is in a way that appeals to the audience's desire for action and adventure. Some of the most impressive action scenes and displays of magic in animation have indeed come from anime over the past decade or so, but the action itself isn't anything essential to anime. What made a show, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, an anime or anime-inspired, while its contemporaries, like As Told by Ginger, not? What made The Life and Times of Juniper Lee, another contemporary, more inherently anime than The Weekenders? Anime, as we've unpacked in this series, isn't merely about action or magic or melodrama, like we see in the most popular shonen and shoujo anime series. Anime has a certain type of ethic. It has its own set of values. It has a certain perspective on society and culture and religion. It has its own style. It has its own pathos. How anime emotes is unique. How it inspires the audience to feel is unique. But most importantly, all anime aren't the same. There are a plethora of different anime types and genres like horror, comedy, action-adventure, magical girl, romantic, and even slice of life, much like how cartoons used to be. There was a time before the 2010s when cartoons, albeit not as numerous, were nearly as varied as anime. Some cartoons were for toddlers, some action or comedies for kids, some young adult, some were adult comedies, and some were about the everyday paths that we take in daily life. They were slice of life shows, just like Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold, in the most essential ways, represented anime and Eastern sensibilities far better than much of what people would call anime-inspired today. It was artistic, it was emotional, and slow when it needed to be. It told deep, moving stories that could bring you to tears. It represented real life and real people in all their natural and incidental diversities. The characters lived their cultures and identities. And it was fun and funny. But Hey Arnold was still just a cartoon. In the past, Western animation showrunners weren't afraid to have complex moral lessons without being sandwiched between two fight scenes, when these lessons didn't have to be sequestered to young adult content, when shows could be slow when they needed to be, when they didn't have to rely on pop culture or meld every genre into one show to check every box, when they had real diversity of life experience and not just skin color. Think about Nickelodeon's Doug, As Told by Ginger, The Weekenders, very much slice-of-life programs. By today's standards, they wouldn't even have been made. There's no action in these shows or magic. Doug had a bit of imagination, but it was much more essentially a slice of life. They were more about exploring the ordinary lives of people and giving meaning and value to those everyday occurrences. All slice of life anime aren't without action or magic, but much beloved anime, like March Comes Up Like a Lion, Free, Yuru Yuri, and Food Wars, are all slice of life anime, with no magic or fighting to speak of. Where has this genre gone for Western animation? Because we once had it. We once had shows that were character-driven and didn't have to rely on complex world-building to have an audience. Even superhero shows of the time, like the Batman and Superman animated series, and eventually the Justice League show, and the superhero genre itself was far more character-driven than today. Both Batman and Superman were tragic heroes in their own way, one choosing to sacrifice his personal life to protect a city, and one duty-bound by his tremendous power to. Gargoyles took a twist on dark fantasy that was far more Shakespearean than any mainstream Western animation that I've seen to date. There was a time when some cartoons were more focused on telling a story than pleasing a focus group. Cartoons have been high-concept programs about life and community in the past. They didn't have to be over-reliant upon action to be good or even to be made. They didn't have to substitute well-written drama with hugging because the narratives were too focused on displays of magic. Western animation is a pale reflection of what it used to be, not because of the quality of its best content, but because of its variety. Today's showrunners are too focused on whether or not an animation has an audience before making the show that they forget that you have to cultivate the audience. Why does this need to be animated happens to be a refrain used by the gatekeepers of Western animation studios, and you see the result. Most animation today has either an action-adventure element or a supernatural element, regardless of what studio is producing it. They're bound by the veneer of comedy and forgo drama and the slow, quiet scenes necessary to experience true catharsis. They don't find value in the honest, ugly, real, mundane, tragic, messy occurrences in ordinary life. It is true that animation is expensive and it is best to make the most out of the medium. But what happens to the Dougs of this generation? Where are the As Told by Gingers, Rocket Powers, or Pepper Anns? Where are the Hey Arnolds? Cartoons aren't anime. They differ on a lot of levels, but they don't have to differ so much. Despite popular belief, there was a time in animation when there was a lot more genre diversity than there is today. When cartoons were thoughtful, hopeful, and methodical, as well as funny, adventurous, and action-packed. Anime is good and cartoons are good. You can decide which you like best, but I think we'd appreciate them both more if we could remind the world that there's still a place for shows like Hey Arnold at the table.